Crieff is a quiet market town situated near the Highland boundary fault in Perthshire, Scotland. The layout of the town and the area around it is quite extraordinary, its streets and country roads having been systematically designed for well over 4,000 years with respect to ancient sites, like standing stones and circles, castles, a priory, faery knowls, and many burial grounds, with 3 of these dating back to the Neolithic age. The streets are aligned to prehistoric sites up to the early 19th century. These are called ley lines, streams of energy from standing stones, for instance. Standing stones are usually placed above volcanic dikes and faults and pick up the natural energies, focusing them across country, often into ancient burial grounds. These energies can be amplified simply by placing a CD player on top and playing, in this illustration, for instance, Geomantic drumming, which increases the energy down the line about 100%. Oddly, playing rock music shatters the energy system quite dramatically. See my other YouTube presentations at the end for more information on this interesting aspect. This film will be mainly of interest to the local inhabitants, but is also intended to show the general public that ley lines are real and that they are extremely important, and can be found in many of the towns and villages in the United Kingdom. This is the view of the town from Knockmary. This is Crieff, nestling at the foot of Benign, now panning west to the hills around St Fillan's. As you can see in this illustration, the Bantry path is on the ley line to Strow church and burial ground. Walking along the Bantry path, also called the Kincardine Walk. Many years ago, as I mentioned earlier, I discovered how to amplify the energies from standing stones and succeeded in increasing the energy from a local stone by a factor of 2. The following day, a woman with 4 children out for a nature ramble on this path were horrified when a small figure, dressed in green, with black splotches on her face and no visible legs, floated up to them, said "Teehee, teehee," and disappeared from the feet up. This, and several other incidents, has convinced me that we live on a very strange planet, which only occasionally reveals herself. This upright stone, one of several others lying prostrate, may be the remains of a stone circle originally standing in the nearby field. Strow church dates back to medieval times and was rebuilt in 1632 and 1684. The graves belong mainly to the Stirling family, one-time lairds of Strow. This is Broad Road, for instance. To the left, about 50 metres from the camera, at one time was the state of Crieff, originally a Neolithic burial chamber, later used as a justiciary court. A typical Neolithic and Bronze Age burial chamber in good condition. This is Braefordie in Wales. The similar state of Crieff has, unfortunately, been completely destroyed and is no longer visible. And this is Crieff's coat of arms, showing the Earls of Strathearn sitting on top of the state of Crieff, holding the scales of justice, dispensing it to any criminal unlucky enough to get caught. At his feet are a set of jugs, or stocks, to which the criminal was tethered. When the site was excavated, 3 deposits of bones, some of them cremated, were found, 2 of which were each in a short cyst. One of the cysts also contained a food vessel. This is all that remains of the jugs, now in the Perth Museum. For many years I wondered what these 2 pillars in the Crieff cemetery were for, until, with the help of 2 of my psychic friends, one of whom could visualize a strange energy rising vertically from this area, I realized that it would originally have had a horizontal capstone similar to this, photoshopped on in this illustration. For more information on this very strange discovery, see my YouTube presentations at the end. Through the centre arch you can see the water fountain, with 3 Egyptian ibis birds and a dove of peace at the top. Also, to add to his plight, the criminal might have known that another ley line, A stream of energy from Crieff dead stone circle at the top right of this illustration to rotten rare Neolithic burial ground passes neatly through the Gallows via faery knoll beside the circle. A close-up of the cemetery and the gallows. Caterans with their cattle would doff their hats in deference to the kind gallows as they passed on their way, muttering as they passed beneath its shadow, "God bless her nainsel," and "the devil damn you," which is not surprising as it was capable of hosting more than one cadaver at a time. The last execution was of a Reverend Duncan on the 8th of June in 1681, who was accused of scandalous offences, as the body of a child had been found under the hearthstone of his manse. The evidence against him was very slender, and a reprieve was ordered, but the person sent with the reprieve entered Mouthil, a mere 3 miles away just as the Reverend was dispatched. Another straight road, the Spoke Road, a straight road or death road, used to carry coffins into Crieff, avoiding one of the expensive tolls. Projecting this road to the east to its destination is Samson's Stone, a large boulder, usually referred to as a glacial erratic, as it does not belong to the area, being schistose grit lying on conglomerate rock. This is not natural. There are several such boulders in the area, all placed at sacred sites by our ancient geomancers, as focal points of ley lines. Here are some examples: the serpent or dragon of nearby St. Fillan's, and the rocking stone of Glentarkin. And two we shall meet shortly, both on the knock, the cradle stone, and a cup-marked stone. The magnificent Drummond Castle, sitting on top of a volcanic dike on the Gas Ridge, comprises a tower house built in the late 15th century and a 17th century mansion, both of which were rebuilt in Victorian times. It was later owned by Captain James Drummond, who began a number of improvements. These included the gardens and terraces in the 1830s. Queen Victoria visited the gardens in 1842. These gardens have been described as the best example of formal terrace gardens in Scotland. When the masons finished building the castle, they turned their attention to Crieff and built the 3 main streets in the form of a Masonic right-angled triangle, here outlined in red, each aligned with distant volcanic plugs adorned with castles. King Street, aligned and taking its energy from Dumbarton Castle Rock, seat of the kings, bottom left, to a 4-stone circle in the golf course and onto a curious but destroyed double 6-stone circle at Tully Belt and north of Perth. Burrell Street, using the energies from Stirling Castle Rock, bottom centre, to the cradle stone, and another lay from a stone circle on top of Braefordie Hill, top left, on a volcanic pluton, a volcano which didn't quite reach the surface. This one travels up West High Street, along the High Street and through the town clock, town chambers, prison, a haunted shop and onto the 1,000-year-old St. Michael's Church and Burial Ground to Dunning Church and Burial Ground with a standing stone in line further to the east. Some of the elements of the right-angled triangle of streets, Stirling Castle and its volcanic plug. The one remaining stone still standing of the 4-stone circle at Braefordie, near Cumnor. Church in Crieff. This church at one time hosted a wooden idol. Dunning Church. Parts of it are 800 years old. It is dedicated to St. Cerf, who slew a dragon on this spot, probably an allegorical tale of how the saint, with a knowledge of earth energies, manipulated this ley line. This church now hosts a Celtic cross. The Dublin Cross, a beautifully carved picture stone, probably, according to Crichton Miller, a representation of an ancient astronomical instrument, originally made of wood. Note the curious angle of the cross arm, which in its original version, a picked priest would be able to swivel to any astronomical event, to give its declination and bearing, like this illustration. The town planners were obviously aware of geomancy, as you can see here, that Victoria Terrace has many of its garden boundaries pointing to the highest hill in the area, the Upper Knock. Other house boundaries are aligned to this important stone, the Cradle Stone, which is also aligned to Burrell Street, marked here in red. This may have been a sacred rocking stone in the past, as, until recently, young girls would go to this boulder, put their ears against it, and if they heard a baby cry, would know that someday they would marry and have children. This may have been the almost forgotten knowledge of a fertility rite. It was damaged in the past and is now broken into two. Yet another focal point for determining the house boundaries is this conglomerate boulder with what looks like natural cut marks or petroglyphs carved onto its surface. Whether natural or carved by man, however, it is obviously part of the design of the town, and certainly radiates waves of energy in all directions which have been used to define boundaries. I always leave a small votive offering of cash or something nice for the fairies before I go on my way. Twice recently I have done this, and to my great astonishment, been rewarded by the most beautiful rainbow within a few minutes. This is Dundarn Church with a cut-marked stone near the entrance. Cut-marked stones and boulders have been found over much of the planet, but my research has shown conclusively that these serve a number of different purposes, but what is common to all is that they are situated above volcanic anomalies, such as fissures, and one common method is to use the natural energies emitted from them, transmitting roughly circular spirals upon which ancient burial grounds were placed. Even the 100-metre-long bridge over the River Erne is aligned with the partly destroyed Croft Head 4-stone circle. The 3-mile-long Crieff to Muthil road, outlined here in red, is obviously aligned with the Ochtar Tyre mausoleum, which has been carefully placed above the Highland boundary fault which runs under many of the sacred sites. Mony Church and its burial ground are also shown here on the Highland boundary fault. In the past, our ancestors would put their most sacred sites on the most powerful ley lines. The volcanic island of Staffa is probably the most powerful emitter of leys in the United Kingdom. St Columba chose Iona to build his abbey between the powerfully resonating Fingal's Cave and the extinct volcano in Las Palmas de Canaria. It is not surprising that he chose this site, as I read in an old book that a light in the back of Fingal's Cave can be seen on the island of Iona. This exquisite cave, called in the past by the Gallows as Uavbeen, the Cave of Melody, is a first-class amplifier of natural telluric energy, focusing it like a laser through Iona Abbey, one of the oldest Christian religious centres in Western Europe, to the extinct volcano of Las Palmas de Gran Canaria. The most powerful sacred sites on the planet are placed between two or more volcanic plugs. Some of my previous YouTube presentations. We have lost this knowledge spanning almost 5,000 years, a knowledge and culture which was deemed so powerful that our ancestors spent an enormous amount of time and resources to build. Perhaps we should, in our scientific technological age, remember the importance of the knowledge of the spirits of our ancestors and the spirit of place which, according to the ancient Chinese, benefits our health and prosperity. The first of two of my books, Ley Lines in Earth Energies. This is my research into the ley system from one ancient cut-marked boulder placed over the powerful Highland boundary fault. It reveals for the first time how standing stones and circles work, and ley lines of the UK and USA. This book shows how our ancestors used natural energy sources, like volcanic plugs and extinct volcanoes, which emit energies like the spokes of a bicycle wheel. They picked any line which suited their purpose to build their sacred burial grounds, churches, abbeys and cathedrals. This knowledge has been largely lost, but some secret societies even today are still using some of this powerful knowledge.